It's the news and information you want and the hour of radio you simply can't miss. The KBOW Party Line. Today's show is brought to you by...
The Party Line, brought to you by great community-minded businesses like Brothers Water Treatment Services, Janelle Morgan, your Century 21 real estate agent, Harrington Surgical Supply, Dugan Dolan Mortuary, Shea Realty, The Broken Arrow Steakhouse and Supper Club, Crazy Carol's Casino, United Way of Butte and Anaconda, Town Pump, proud to be a business from Butte, Shadhorn Sports, Southwest Montana Community Health Center, The Continental Gardens, Butte Floral Company, Silverbow Trophy, and Community Hospital of Anaconda, all joining together to bring you the KBOW Party Line. Hello, everybody. Pleasure to have you on the PL today as well. You know what it is. It's Wednesday. That means, well, it's Brown Bag Wednesday as we get a chance to visit with the archives and host the Brown Bag lunches from the archives. By the way, I went to lunch with my mom early, so thanks for not bringing me any more food.
Oh, you're welcome.
It was awfully nice of you not to bring me more.
Yeah.
Because usually, you
always
bring me lunch.
I didn't bring you food.
Yeah.
Someday I'm going to bring it, and you're not going to know what to do.
Well, I probably won't eat it because you'll probably poison it just to get even with me for all the bad times I give you.
No, I would make more for you.
Oh, there you go.
I should bring some Irish bread in for you.
Oh, now you're talking. Yeah, that's good stuff. Soda bread?
Irish soda bread handed down from my great grandmother who came to Butte about 1895. And so this recipe has been handed down through all of the generations. So me and my cousins make it. And my cousin's wife, one of my cousin's wives, she is Italian and she doesn't like caraway seeds. So she said, I wonder if I'm trying to think of what it was she was going to put in there, but it sounded really good. I think it was anise. And I said, hey, go for it, add it. And then I put craisins in mine instead of raisins because I don't like raisins. So I just need to get some buttermilk and get bacon.
There's another issue we have. I mean, how could you not like raisins? I mean, come on.
All right, I bet there are a lot of your listeners out there who would agree with me who don't like raisins. Raisins are gross.
We'll do one day. I'll do that. We'll do a check on that. Who likes raisins?
Who likes raisins?
Yeah.
And Well,
that's not the topic of our brown
bag
lunch today. Okay. I just want to let everybody know that if you tuned in to hear us talk about what we like and don't like, we don't. We have a special guest here today.
We do.
In studio.
We do.
And we're going to be talking here on the Brown Bag Lunch about something other than Irish soda bread. And by the way, I'll trade you one of my mom's. I didn't even ask my mom if she's making Blarney Stones. Lorraine, you making Blarney Stones? She makes great Blarney Stones. Oh, really good ones. Anyway, but we're not talking about that either. Let's get to the Brown Bag Lunch. Introduce our guest today.
So today we have probably one of Butte's newest authors. First-time author, Jacob Sorich, who is a local journalist and historian, and he has just written a book called The Cabbage Patch. And get all our mics adjust. He has written a book called The Cabbage Patch, and if you're listening and you don't know where the Cabbage Patch, we'll let Jake talk about it.
Why not let the expert do that?
Let the expert talk about it. So, and what is the subtitle of your book, Jake?
So the subtitle is Murder, Mayhem, Gangs, Ethnic Wars in Butte, Montana's Forgotten Ghetto.
Yeah,
there's a lot to cover in this book.
There is a lot to cover.
Well, let's do this. Jake, I know Sorich, that's a name we all know from our council commissioners, and I actually grew up with your dad, John.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We ran around in the same hood together. Talk about gang wars and neighborhood brawls. I mean... He was always the
You're
peacekeeper.
Such a bully, aren't
you?
No,
I was. I ran faster scared than they all did mad. So anyway, but tell us a little bit about you and life growing up in Butte and a little bit about the Sorich clan.
Yeah, you bet. Well, I grew up here, like you said, and I went to University of Montana where I got my journalism degree. But before that, I was in radio. I did a radio show up at the tech radio station up there. Can't think of the letters right now. It was 106.9. They moved it though. They changed it now. But so I did that.
It's not even on the air anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know if they're still.
They shut it down because of you. No, just joking.
They could have, it was it would be my legacy. Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
No, so I really like that. I spent a year at Tech, and I wanna get more into the storytelling side. So then I went to UM and got into journalism, and then I worked for several newspapers around the state. I was working in Anaconda. I was a sports guy there for a year. And then I ended up in Great Falls, where I was the arts and entertainment guy for about 7 years or so. And then I've also done freelance stuff. I've done some historical freelance articles and different personality profiles for Montana Magazine and Missoula Independent and some other national things. And I've always been really fascinated by Butte, though, and anytime you talk to any of my friends, and they say when the subject of Butte comes up, Jake won't shut up.
Well, you're a typical Butte guy then.
I am, yeah. I could talk for days and days and days about it, and it's just the history of Butte is so rich and so deep, and it's just pretty incredible.
A lot of us have that affliction where if you ask us about something historical, we just won't shut up about it.
That's why these brown bag lunches are so much fun.
I know, Butte lends itself to that. There's so many rich stories. So what made you choose to do a book about the Cabbage Patch?
Yeah, so it was interesting. I had just moved back here last June because of COVID, and I was living close to my grandma and grandpa uptown, and my grandpa had been spending time with Pat Moen, who he's doing, he did the foreword to our book as well. Mm-hmm. And, my grandpa is good friends with Pat, and Pat owns a couple of the buildings there at the Cabbage Patch, and my grandpa said, Jake, I've got something that you might be interested in. We're working on the Cabbage Patch, and wouldn't it be interesting to do a story about this neighborhood? And great. It started as it was going to be a magazine profile, but then I started researching it, and then I realized, oh my gosh, this is bigger than I had even
It just kept going and going, didn't it?
Absolutely.
It's like pulling that thread off the bottom of your sweater, and it just keeps unraveling. That's Butte's history right there.
Then you're left with cuffs and a collar. Everything else is gone.
I don't know. I haven't reached the end of the sweater yet.
Oh, I beat you.
Yeah. So it turned into the book. And then he had a bunch of photos.
Yes.
And I found a bunch of old newspaper articles of some of the controversial things of what happened back then. And then we also talked to a good handful of people who had lived there or they had family there, and they gave me some great tales about what life was like there. And it was even just the little things that was fascinating from them. One person told me, there are no telephone poles in the Cabbage Patch, and the reason for that is, when it got cold, people would tear down the tear down the telephone poles for firewood. So
I never knew that.
Yeah, just little things like that. They're really fascinating. And he said, we didn't have any place to play, so, we would go around the mines and we would be playing in the mines, just that's kind of how, you play when you're a kid, you're just playing around what's in the neighborhood.
It's a big mountain of dirt. I'm going to go climb it.
Just think, you could sit there and play trucks. You could dig tunnels to put your, you could use, we did that even over on Elm Street. It's just a pile of dirt that you found all of a sudden, or you go down where a house used to be that burned down and the foundation was all crumbled in. That was a place to play.
Exactly.
Well, I've been watching for 2 years. I go by this corner. I'm not going to say where it is because I don't want these boys to get in trouble. And I've been watching these boys that are probably almost teenagers now building ramps and all kinds of stuff for their bikes. They're playing Evel Knievel.
Oh, we all were.
But they're doing the stuff that we did in the 70s when we were kids. And it made me so happy to see that.
Yeah, they're not in the house on the TV with their PlayStation.
Yeah,
they're actually out enjoying.
And you could see the changes they'd make day to day, and this is deeper and this is taller, and it just like you said, you had to create your own entertainment.
And I think that's one thing that's really resonated with a lot of people because it's uniquely Butte in that way. Because when a lot of people grew up in Butte neighborhoods, there weren't a lot of places like playgrounds or monkey bars or stuff. And so that's not all what the book's about, but that's definitely something.
That was the start, the gem of it.
Yeah, and I started with that, and talking with different people who lived in the neighborhood, and then I have to say though that the quality of newspaper reporting back in the heyday of Butte history, from like 1900 just around 1940 or so, right when the Anaconda Company was in its heyday, the level of detail that they put in those stories, and I'm assuming most of it, maybe some of it was true. Hopefully most of it, I'm assuming most of it was true. And
they didn't have to be concerned with people's privacy either.
Well, yeah, exactly. But so having that to that resource to look up, and some of these stories about these people, it was just, my God, I was like, I could never have made some of this stuff up that I was reading about these people who lived in this Cabbage Patch.
Yeah.
And they were all there at the same time, and it was just like week after week after week, and it was just, how do you keep up with all this? It's just like...
And some of it you're saying, no way that happened. There's no way, but here it is, documented.
And there's one paper that's a lot more detailed than the other, if there was a report on a murder, they would have a half a
so
page
what was
on it.
What paper? What one was?
The Butte Miner was a lot more. Did you find that as well, Jake? Jake's nodding his head.
Yeah, I did. The Butte Miner, the Anaconda, I think it depended on the subject sometimes.
Maybe. But,
and because, it depended on who owned what newspaper.
If it was salacious, the Butte Miner went all out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So did you do most of your research then at the archives, through the archives files, or?
I did. I did go to the archives a lot, and I would ask for things that I couldn't find on my own, and newspapers.com is a great resource. They have basically almost all of the newspapers you can find in the United States, going back to like 1700s.
Up to about 1922, and Montana has exceptional coverage.
Yeah,
wow.
But it really is a subscription service.
It is,
that
yeah.
you can use for free up at the Butte Archives.
That's
if you
right.
Come up to the Butte Archives.
Yeah.
You can sit there and use it.
Yeah, and I definitely came to the archives to find things that I couldn't find, or I would go through things that I was looking through old mining records books, because the Cabbage Patch, interesting enough, started as a mine, the Hesperus lode.
That's where sorry, I was doing some research today, and the people lived on the Hesperus lode, and I thought, now where was that? Thank you.
Cabbage Patch.
Yeah,
Cabbage Patch.
And the crazy thing was, there was an ownership tussle between who owned the mine, and in the meantime between that, people started moving in there because nobody could charge them for rent because they didn't know who lived there. So that's kind of what.
So basically, it was one of the. It was what you would say is like the cardboard villages, or the. They actually squatted on land that nobody had a claim to.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
eventually built all these little shacks and cabins.
Made out of probably leftovers they found everywhere, in every garbage and every back alley or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it started. And the funny thing is that the land they were squatting on was worth a lot of money. It was, but it's just nobody knew who owned it. I mean, this group of people paid this much for it, and this other people says, "Well, I was here before then," and so it was trying to decipher. Well, if I paid for this, I should own it. And it's like, well, I lived here before you paid for it, so how should that work? But in the meantime, it had this tremendous value that this group of people had for this land, and then it became this ghetto. So it was just like, blew my mind that this ghetto that seemingly, these low lifes of Butte at the time were living on, it was underneath them was like $1 million claim. So it just fascinating stuff.
Did you do your research? Did you ever find out who actually truly owned the land?
So yeah, it was settled, and it ended up being, and I should have brought the book with me. I don't have it with me, but I'm the names of the people. But there was a group of people who they did end up, I think it went to the Montana Supreme Court, and they got a settlement from the Supreme Court that said these people own this land. And there were even after that, there were a few holdout people who said, no, even whatever the Supreme Court says, I don't care. I'm staying here. I've lived here.
Possession.
Exactly, exactly. So that whole part is how it started. I don't know if that's ever been, talked about, written about much, but then just that was where it started, and then just going on from there to the creation of the Silverbow homes and how that started, and there was controversy with that because there were people who owned parts of the land who they felt they weren't getting enough because they paid them like $1,000 to give up their title to the land, and there were people who said that's not enough for me. And so it's just, that was one tiny piece of part of the book that I found fascinating, along with all the colorful people who live there.
Which we haven't even gotten to yet.
Which, we want to get to those people, but I need to take a time out. So when we come back, let's go to the characters.
Yeah.
Because, and one thing we need to do, if for those that don't know this, maybe they're new to Butte or not sure, let's outline the area that was the Cabbage Patch. Then we'll talk about the characters.
Yes.
We'll do that right after this.
That.
It's the KBOW Party Line, our brown bag lunch, going lunchless again. We'll continue after this.
In addition to some of the best water treatment, softeners, and filters, Brothers Water Treatment and Pump Service offers water well pump installation to residents in Butte and surrounding area. From frost-free hydrants, pressure tanks, on-demand pumps, and regular maintenance, Brothers Water Treatment provides timely service to each customer. With over 40 years water experience, choose Brothers Water Treatment and Pump Service. Free bids available. Call 559-0261. Brothers Water Treatment and Pump Service, owned and operated by Wayne Brothers.
Her clients say she's a good listener. That's the most important quality a real estate agent can have. Janelle Morgan, real estate agent with Century 21 Shea Realty, attentively pays attention to what you want. She listens. Are you ready to sell your home, business, or property? Are you ready to buy a new home, business, or property? Sounds like it's time to call Janelle Morgan at 490-7945. That's Janelle Morgan with Century 21 Shea Realty at 490-7945 in Butte.
Experience excellence with Harrington Surgical Supply. If you or a loved one or family member is currently rehabilitating at home, Harrington's offers equipment rentals like lift chairs and wheelchairs, walkers, commodes, and more, making it even easier for those who need in-home medical equipment on short-term or temporary basis. See Harrington Surgical Supply at 53 East Broadway in historic Uptown Butte, or call 723-6541. Proudly serving Butte and southwestern Montana since 1946.
A lifetime of love, you lived a lifetime of love.
In a time of personal loss, there are so many memories.
I remember the good times together.
A lifetime of good times.
In your family's sorrow, we can provide every service and option and leave you with loving memories.
A lifetime of love.
Memories of a lifetime of love. Dugan Dolan Mortuary, we care. At 1805 Meadowlark, 723-3239.
I'm just going to go there first.
I wasn't there.
Well, let's get back. And Kim, as we went to break, we set up some things we wanted to talk about with Jake. So let's go there.
Let's, for those who might not be from Butte, or maybe you've just moved here or something, you want to know where this magical place is, let's talk about where it is situated. Where can people find it?
Well, let's start with some landmarks here. So if you're recently from Butte, you know where Butte High is, hopefully.
Yes.
So across from Butte High, you go up Arizona Street there, and you have the Silverbow homes there. That's the most southern part of the Cabbage Patch there.
So across from Miller's Boots and Shoes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of the general region, and then you go up to Galena Street, and that's kind of the most northern part of it there. And then in the western part, it kind of depended on the neighborhood because there were different ethnic groups. Probably, I think the farthest west maybe be like the Belmont mine over that. It's
farthest east.
Furthest east.
East. You're right. Yeah.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I do the same. The same. Furthest east would be the Belmont.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's kind of the general region there.
Yeah.
And at different times, it grew and it shrunk, and depending on who was living in there, and so that's about where I focused most of my, because we looked up addresses and we looked up, who lived in this house and, when did they live here and all that. So
what's interesting is I remember the Belmont as a kid,
Yeah.
growing up as a kid, because we used to trap pigeons on the Belmont for the Hunt Club of Butte, the guys that train their bird dogs. But I remember the big fence. They'd have a 12-foot wooden fence all the way around the Belmont yard. That was to keep the Cabbage Patch out. And I remember just talking to one of the guys that worked the mine one day. So why is this fence so high and none of the rest of the mines have this? And he said to keep the Cabbage Patch out.
That's right. That's right.
So they had this huge wooden fence.
Little nuggets we're learning
And it was
right
still
now.
there when I was a kid, which was a long time ago. But still, it was still there.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really quite the
Kind of where
quite
Butte
the
Central
area.
is now.
Exactly.
Where the Mac.
Where the
Yeah,
map
exactly,
is.
exactly.
Yeah.
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 And one thing I really found fascinating about the different parts of the Cabbage Patch is where the different ethnic groups
Yes.
would be.
So
'Cause-
what are some of the groups? So what are some of the ethnicities?
Yeah, so there was, it surprised me, it really did, the number of them. So we had the Syrians and the Assyrians, so they were a big group there. There was, they had the Mexicans there, they had some, I want to say like Middle Eastern, and they had,
the Turks and Afghans.
Exactly, yeah, yeah.
Lebanese. A few of those in there.
Iranians. I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and what was interesting in the newspaper articles I was finding, a lot of them all sold tamales. It was the tamale
Yes.
business was big for
Not
big-
and not the Mexicans. It was like the Lebanese who sold the tamales.
yeah, the
Isn't that
Khans.
interesting?
Yeah, they all had
Yes.
the last name Khan, but not all of them were
Yes.
related. It was
Yeah.
had something to do with a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Then they had the Mexican king of the colony at the time, and his name was Mr. Sixtobaca. His claim to fame was he got shot, and he went to the hospital, and he walked out of the hospital. I don't know. He was like, I'm done with this. Still had the bullet in his arm. He walked out of the hospital, and he's like, I'm fine, and he just went back to the kitchen and started working, like everything was fine, and just.
Nobody was going to take that man down.
That's right. That's right.
That's right. He got to be the king of the colony.
Yeah, that's right. He was.
He was always packing lead.
Yeah, he was a tough son of a gun. That's for sure.
And wasn't there a queen of the colony?
Yeah, so that one of my probably most favorite characters was the queen of the Cabbage Patch. She had a reputation where, and she was even quoted in one article. She said, "Whenever we go out, there seems to be trouble," and that was a very low-key way to put it, because there were 3 different murders that happened as a result of her involvement. So what would happen was there would be multiple guys who would be vying for her affection. She was this very beautiful half Mexican, half, I think she was a half black gal, and she had this very, appealing look to these guys, and so yeah, there were 3 different times where one guy was like, "You're not gonna, you don't get her, I do," and he would shoot the guy, and it would happen 3 times, and so
Whole new meaning to turf war, I guess. Huh?
yeah, I would think, nowadays it'd be like, you'd get the news, stay away from this person, bad news. But I guess, and
Maybe she stirred up the drama a little bit.
she really did. Yeah.
So the king and queen get recognized by all the different ethnicities in the patch, or is it this just in the Mexican?
It would depend. At times they would just have one king of the Cabbage Patch and one queen, and then other times there would be, well, he's the Mexican king of the colony, and they would have the Assyrian had their own kind of king of their colony, but it was very a fluid neighborhood. You had people moving in, moving out all the time, and one thing that really tied them all was the drug use. That was really a big thing that all kind of kept them there, because So when, if their supply got cut off, they might be gone, that kind
And
of
so
thing.
are we talking 1890s, 1920s, 1950s, when you're talking about like the drug use and the crimes?
Yeah,
what decade are we at?
We're probably talking the 1910s to 1920s,
Nice.
around that area. And one interesting thing I found, you're speaking about the king and queen of the colony. So there was this guy, if you read the book Copper Camp, which is, it's pretty
one of my
well known.
favorites, yeah.
Absolutely. And it's
Awesome.
it's a well-known book with characters from Butte. And there was this person that they mentioned called McNamara, and he's listed as the king of the Cabbage Patch. So I wanted to know more about this McNamara guy. So I looked him up, and there was no first name given in Copper Camp, and he was referenced in other books and other articles and things. And I was like, okay, well, what's the deal with this McNamara? I couldn't find anything. So finally, I found in a newspaper article a reference to the queen of the Copper Camp, Mexicali Rose, is what they called her, in association to this other guy named O'Hara. And O'Hara met a lot of the same descriptions as McNamara. So whoever did the story in Copper Camp, whoever they might have misremembered, that was my...
Or maybe they purposely hid his identity.
Or maybe he hid his identity.
Who knows?
So he didn't get gunned down.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But in his end of his story was actually pretty fascinating. He was house sitting another person's, I don't know why exactly, but he was house sitting in another house, and it blew up. The house just blew up, and he died in the explosion.
Was there a still?
I thought that might have been a still. The newspaper articles at the time didn't say it was a still. They said there was gasoline there, and he had set up. It was really very odd. I mean, houses don't just explode. So something
Somebody
nefarious.
found out his real name, O'Hara.
Maybe it was a hit.
It's where I was going.
Yeah. So and
dynamite was known to disappear from the mine at times. So.
Oh yeah. And then the story became, his still exploded in his house, and that's kind of the story. And I think but the newspaper articles I found didn't mention anything about a still. So, but I thought it was really interesting tying these kind of loose ends together and try to finding, well, what actually happened. And as far as some of this stuff, when you go back in history, you never really know what happened, because it's lost to time or whatever.
Right.
But so that's why we're so lucky here in Butte, because we had these great resources of reporters who were on this stuff telling these stories, and that's just one instance of I was able to piece together this stuff that really had never really been explored all that much, it seemed like. And I think that's what really excited me about doing this book too, because it's this specific neighborhood in Butte a lot of people know about, but they don't really know it.
They don't know of it.
That's
Yeah,
right.
they know
That's
of it.
right.
They don't know about it. Yeah.
I mean, I've been born and raised Butte, and I always heard about the Cabbage Patch, and always thought, of course, the brothels, because the cribs, the small cribs.
Yeah.
And you knew about that, but the idea, and you knew there were a lot of murders in the Cabbage Patch area, but the idea of the gang wars and then the ethnic groups going to war with each other, I mean, without your book, we didn't research that.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have known that. We knew where the Cabbage Patch was, but you just didn't. You always knew about the Cabbage Patch having the cribs.
Okay.
Yeah.
But because that was, the brothels. Because it was always, that's where the miners that didn't have much money went.
Right.
Because the other ones, the ones that are more
expensive.
well known, were too expensive.
That's right.
So and that's the story I always had as a Butte kid.
Yeah, that's right.
So understanding, I mean, I didn't hear about all the different ethnic groups. I knew there was ethnic wars, but in Butte, you were always taught that the ethnic groups had their own part of town.
Right.
In this case, they all lived within the same area.
Yeah.
An area that probably the average human would stay out of.
Yeah. I was asked once if you had a chance to go back to the Cabbage Patch, would you walk down there in the middle of the night? I was like, no, thank you.
So now, without the book, I don't know if you remember this quote. It seemed like there was a quote about that the cops referred to the Cabbage Patch. What was it they used to say about it?
So they said, if he's not in the Cabbage Patch, he's not in Butte. They're referring to the criminals of Butte at the time.
Okay.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So they go to hide
kind
out
of the
there, huh?
demilitarized zone. He's
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
You go get him. Your turn. So.
Yeah. And that I've really found that to be true. And I tried with my book too. I also tried to, because it's easy to look down on it in a way because of all this awful things. And I mean, obviously you can't glorify murder and mayhem and all that. You know, you can't really glorify that too much. Right. But I did find people who were from the Cabbage Patch or lived in the Cabbage Patch who made their own name and became these really celebrated people within the neighborhood.
Well, one of Butte's most famous, Pat Mohan's uncle, is it his uncle?
Yeah.
Tony the Trader. You know,
I was just going
right
to say
there.
Tony the Trader, but I wanted you to get that one.
Yeah.
Right. Tony came out of there.
Tony
He
was
did.
Probably one of the, if not the best known.
At least in our time.
In our time.
In our times.
The ones that if we
I mean, you never went to a parade without Tony and his cast of characters.
Yeah.
So, which would have been a relics of the Cabbage Patch.
Absolutely.
Probably, yeah.
I love it.
Tony was fascinating, yeah.
So let's talk a moment. I want to go to that because we kind of touched on the ethnic wars, but there were some serious battles. There were some bloodbaths that went on inside there. Talk about some of the research you found on that.
Yeah, those battles, that was something else. So they would have, so Chinatown was nearby, and there was this one particular battle that started in Chinatown. These two warring families started in Chinatown. Then it bled over into the Cabbage Patch. They got word of this into the head of the Chinese ethnic group in San Francisco, and it was part of this giant battle between these two colonies that went all the way to up and down the West Coast. You know, California, Oregon, and
are these the Tong Wars?
Tong Wars, yeah, that's right.
So people know about the Tong Wars in history, but they don't know, and they associate it with San Francisco, L.A., but it did kind of start here.
Yeah.
And you kind of confirmed that. And didn't it kind of go all the way back to Hong Kong or China? I mean,
one point.
it went.
It was big.
An international war, gang war.
Yeah.
Mafia, Chinese mafia, kind of.
Yeah.
And started here. Was that tied in with the opium trade at all, do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. That was a big key point, and you know, a lot of the customers, the opium trade, you know, lived in the Cabbage Patch. So, you know, that's where they would go, and that's where the trouble would happen because
it's crazy.
Yeah.
And just the idea that a major outbreak and battle, it all started here with warring factions right in Butte, Montana.
In a neighborhood.
Yeah. And bled into the Cabbage Patch.
Yeah.
Wow. Probably because of the lack of law.
Oh, absolutely.
I imagine it was a lawless region. It kind of talked about the Wild West, right?
Yeah, right.
So still had that no law in these borders kind of thing.
Yeah. And I also found, speaking of the lack of law, they wanted to move the red light district to the Cabbage Patch. And in I think it was 1919. But they was okay, we're not going to shut down the red light district in Butte. We're going to move it to the Cabbage Patch. Basically what happened, essentially they just decided, no, you know what? Nobody's going to follow that law. So I just kind of ignored it. And it was like, all right, we lost. So we're not going to do that anymore. But so that kind of tied into how much the people of Butte really needed their sense of identity in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And they felt that having the red light district would change that too much. And the law couldn't do anything about it. I mean, what other town in America could just the law say, all right, we're not gonna
we're not gonna enforce it.
Exactly.
You know, I think I'm having a flashback to a party line sometime in the last several years where we talked about how they thought, well, we're going to close down the red light district. And they went out into the city, and then the cops went, oh, that was an even worse idea. Let's
bring it back in here.
Let's bring it back
Exactly.
in.
Well, but some think you had the underground tunnels into the Palmy Cleaner building. I mean, the Palmy Cleaner had the brothel upstairs because the guys could drop off their suits and go upstairs. Everybody thought they were just going to the laundromat. I mean, you could go underground into the tunnels and pop up in the cribs. I mean, there was so if you move it, now all of a sudden it's coming
was
out
harder
in the
to
open.
police. It was out in the open.
Yeah.
It was
I mean, you could go
corrupting more of coming in contact with more Butte's finer citizens,
Well, even if you go, let's say even Elko, Nevada, you go to Kellogg, Idaho, you go to even Elko today, they have their red light district.
Yeah.
It's a mining town. They
Right.
have one. And it's tucked down way away from everything, and people know, just don't go there. I mean, but Kellogg was infamous for its red light district because the highway went through town. You had to go through the red light
and
district.
We were talking about mining areas too.
Yeah, and
It's
that's what
all
I'm saying. So
tied.
all these mining towns, because you had way more men than women.
Yes.
And the women that were there in many cases knew how to make money.
Yeah.
And went on to do greater things.
Oh boy, one day we'll do a show about that. There you go. All right, we're going to take another time out. We come back, we'll get back into the book and talk about. We got to find out where to get this book because
Yes, we need to talk about that.
We'll continue our conversation. It is a brown bag lunch today on the KBOW Party Line with Mr. Jake Sorich joining Kim and I. We'll be back after this.
Hi everyone, this is Jennifer Shea, broker-owner of Century 21 Shea Realty. Welcome to my class today, Real Estate 101. Call Jennifer Shea, 406-560-5366, with information on hundreds of properties throughout Montana, assisting both buyers and sellers. 406-560-5366. Class dismissed. Gary and Jennifer Shea, broker-owners.
Century 21 Shea Realty, independently owned and operated.
Our house is a very, very, very fine house.
The best steaks come from the heart of Montana and cattle country. In our area, that's Deer Lodge, Montana, and the Broken Arrow Steakhouse and Casino, where the steaks are cut fresh and never frozen. Your steak dinner always comes with all the fixins. They have other great options on their menu too, and feature prime rib on Friday and Saturday nights. Check out sports betting while you're in. Take the short drive to Deer Lodge, Montana, Main Street, and the Broken Arrow Steakhouse and Casino.
There's always fun in motion at the Big Red Barn. Old-fashioned service, that's what sets us apart. Where you can win and laugh out loud. The hokey pokey is what it's all about. Where neighborhood people have good old-fashioned fun. There's always something here for everyone. Everybody knows the place to go. Crazy Carol's Casino and Mill Bar.
It's Credo, a mission, a goal, a constant reminder that when we reach out a hand to one, we influence the condition of all. We build the strength of our neighborhoods, we bolster the health of our communities, and we change the lives of those who walk by us every day. Give, advocate, volunteer with United Way of Butte and Anaconda. For more information, call 406-782-1255 or email uwbadirector@president.net today. United, we lift up our communities.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up, pump it up.
When you want to find a nice bottle of wine for a great price, check out your local Town Pump. They've got a great selection like Banded 1-liter wines for only $7.99 and Barefoot 1.5-liter wines for only $10.99. Town Pump, convenient, fast, and right down the road.
Town Pump, right down the road, pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Shedhorn Sports and Ennis is your firearms leader. And yes, it's a fact that Shedhorn has the best selection of firearms in Montana. If what you're looking for isn't in their huge inventory, they offer a full-line catalog online for any special order. And unlike most of the box stores, Shedhorn takes trades. So bring in your old ones to get something bigger, better, or just new to you. Check out their used inventory, too, of left-handed, collector, and quality brands online 24/7 at Shedhorn.com. Quality brands, best selection. Shedhorn Sports, downtown.
The KBOW Party Line, 146 here on your Brown Bag Lunch Wednesday, March 10th. And Kim and Jake joining us today having a fun conversation about the Cabbage Patch.
About the Cabbage Patch.
Learning stuff.
We are learning a lot.
Yeah. So where do you want to go now?
I want to talk about where people can get the book.
Great. I got to write that down.
Yeah. So tell us how people can get the book. If they're booksellers, how can they get the book?
You bet.
And then if they're book buyers, we'll send them to the booksellers.
That kind of is how they're supposed to work.
We've got multiple places right now. So if you're in Butte, you can get the book at most of the bookstores here in Butte. So you have Books and Books. They have a good stock there. You have it at Butte Stuff here in Butte.
Imagine that. They carry all Butte stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's right.
I go there a lot. That's why.
They're great. They're great. Yeah. Secondhand Books has some too.
Second edition.
Second edition. That's right.
books.
Second edition books. Yep.
And then we have 2 new bookstores.
Yeah.
Pick them up?
So the corner bookstore, they're gonna have some. I haven't spoken with the other one yet. I'm not sure, but I know the Archives has kindly carried some as well.
Books. You can get them there. I think you can get them at the Mining Museum too.
Yep, the World Museum of Mining. Yep, you can get them there as well. But if you're not in Butte, if you're listening this online, or if you're not in Butte, you can also go to buttecabbagebepatch.com, and you can get the book there. You can get. I have a bio there. You have a little bit about what the book's about, and so that's a good way to get it if you're not here in town. And the book's sold pretty well so far. I'm feel pretty lucky that people are very excited and to really discover more about this fascinating neighborhood, as I was when I first got into this and started writing it. So it's really resonated, and I feel very lucky for that.
So I got to ask this, Kim. I'm sorry, I've got to ask this. Have you ever thought of taking what you've learned through this nonfiction and write some fictional books about life in the Cabbage Patch?
Oh.
I mean, think about it, because some of the stories by themselves would make great fiction, and adding in some of the names and some of the characters, it would be something that would take you way beyond Butte.
A fun exercise that could turn into a nice novel.
Yeah, I just thought of it because you're writing
or a
skills.
collection of short stories or something, you know.
Sorry, I had to ask. Sorry, Kim, go ahead.
No, well, I was going to ask, have you had anybody, because I've seen this happen before, have you had anybody come up to you and go, well, you got that wrong. You got that wrong.
Just as grandpa. No, I'm just...
I haven't. I've had a few people who...
Or have they elaborated and told you more?
A little bit. I've had a few people who've done that, and I've had a few people who have pointed out a few errors in the copy. So I've been very appreciative of that. But most people have just been like, "Wow, Jake, I didn't know any of that."
Yeah.
And a few people did. They said, or a few people would relate to me and says, my grandparents grew up in the Cabbage Patch, and I have all these photos. Would you want to see these? And I'm just like, that's amazing. Yeah, I would love to see.
Wonderful, yeah.
And so it's really been people relating to their experience, and they come to me, and I think it really speaks to them on that much. And I haven't had anyone who said that's not right. I've had a few people who says, well, actually, it's a little like this. So you kind of got it like this, but it's more like this. Mm-hmm. So it's more kind of expanding upon it in a way. And that's been great to hear from people, and that means it's really speaks to, I think, how special Butte is and how much.
But part of that would be, Jake and Kim both. I mean, you guys are both in the history side of things. Part of that is in history, you have to designate between legend and actual happenings, like the still that blew up in the home, that it wasn't even his home and was it a still. I mean, the idea that when you're doing historical research, people are going to come up and say, hey, you're wrong because it was this. Now, wait, that was the legend, but...
Yes.
Right.
And as historians, that's what we strive to do. We like to take those stories and see if we can track down, through the newspapers or, archival record, things like that, to confirm. We're not looking to debunk it. We're looking to confirm those wonderful nuggets that people share or their memories. And sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. I know in my family we've had a few major, some memories that I went, well, that's not what happened. Right. That couldn't have happened. I've got it right here in the, in the record that this is what really happened, and Grandma lied all those years.
A lot of times what I did, I talked to several people who they would give me their memories, and they'd say, I remember this happened and this happened. And then I would write that down, and I would go to the archives, or I'd go to the newspapers, the subscription service there, and I would plug in the names and the dates, and I would try to find if there was anything written about them, so to clarify on some of that. And I found a few leads. A lot of times it would be, nothing would be there, but sometimes I would find more. I was like, oh, well, this actually did happen, and then this also happened.
And
so
it's so exciting when you do find that hit. You get it, and you go, oh my gosh, they were right. And maybe they were off by a year or something like that, that's not a mistake. That's just this event did happen.
Yeah.
Jake, did you ever find in those situations where it changed your whole direction of where you're going with the book, where something happened where you said, wow, I got to change this now?
This was going to be a gardening book, and it turned into a murder book.
Well, smelly marijuana. I mean, maybe some poppy seeds. Anyway.
It did. It did. There were several times where I thought I had enough of here. I was like, okay, I got some good stories here. And then but then I'm a curious guy, and I want to know as much as I can about it.
You had to keep pulling on that thread.
I did. I would find another name, and then I would look up that name, and then I would look up another name, and then I would look up a date, and I would find a big picture of this thing that happened and this big fire that happened in the neighborhood. It's like, oh my God, I gotta write about this now.
Chapter, right?
Exactly. So it that happened quite a bit, and it was always kind of by accident, almost in a way that I wasn't looking for that, but then I found it, and it was bigger than what I thought it was at the start. So.
Thus, your magazine article became a novel.
Exactly.
There's something about the energy in Butte. I see this a lot at the archives, is that I think there are certain stories that want to be told. Fisk might call them ghosts, but there's an energy, there's a vortex that happens here, and these stories will reach out and grab you and ask you to tell them.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens when you find one name and then another, and then pretty soon you have a whole new story that you've delved into, a rabbit hole or something. And that happens a lot where I work. It happens to me a lot. So there's something about the historic energy here.
You're living in the keeper of the truth. I mean, if you go to the archives, I always look at,
I've had other people who work in archives in other cities go, that doesn't happen where I work.
Yeah, because they didn't have Butte's history.
That too.
And all those things that you find that thread as you talked about.
There were so many threads though, and that's, I mean, not to be like a booster, I sincerely, within my first couple of weeks here, I recognized truly how historic Butte was. I used to tell people, God, Butte has more history in the fingernail of its pinky than like Denver, than a lot of larger places. And that was evident immediately when I moved here, and now I get to live it every day. I learn some new facet of Butte history every day, and it's so cool, isn't it, right?
It really is.
I'm totally geeking out here.
Jake, I got to ask you this, because with all the murder, mayhem, riots, all the things happening, there had to have been some angels, some people that reached out and made good things happen.
Some happy stories, happy thoughts.
There was, I'm thinking, the first one I'm thinking of, there was a fire. I believe it was the Bank Hotel fire. And there was this woman, she pulled out 7 people from the fire.
Oh my gosh.
And then you could never find any other articles about her. She just kind of went out about her life.
She just disappeared, huh?
She just disappeared, and she saved 7 people from this fire.
Did we know her name, or was she just an anonymous woman?
I have her name in the book, yeah.
Wow.
Read the book is what he's telling us.
I know.
That's what I got out
Well,
of it.
I did go through it so I could catalog it. So I remember a few of the things, so I could add those names. If you're looking for certain names, the book will pop up in our catalog record.
Yep.
Do you have an ebook? Do you have it? Is it out of electronics? If somebody wanted to buy it electronically?
Yeah, we're working on that. So we're going to have that soon. I have it set up, and it's just a matter of getting the pieces in the right or the parts in the right place.
Right.
But that'll be out soon. Yeah. So we're.
That's awesome. I like that. Well, I want to thank you for coming in.
Yeah,
and
well,
thanks for shining a light on the history of Butte with today's Brown Bag
Two
Lunch.
history geeks.
I'm loving this.
I know.
This is right up my alley. So, and thank you for coming back to Butte, coming home.
It's been great.
It's nice to have you here.
Yeah, you're going to stay for a while?
I think so.
Maybe another book worth?
Tell Mom and Dad kick them out of the house. That's usually how it works with us Butte guys.
I got another one. I'm working on another one.
What is it? Quick,
do you want to give us a hint?
So a little bit. I haven't talked about much yet, but I'll just give a little hint. It's about the Wild West and some of the old characters, old bandits of the Wild West and their connection to Butte.
We're done. We're out of time. She wants to say something.
No, not on the radio.
Okay.
Hurry up.
Well, thank you both for being here. And we'll see you next month.
Next month, we're going to talk about, what is next month? April? Gardening. Gardens, historic
she's
gardens.
got gardens on her brain.
Gardens.
Anyway, that's next month on the Brown Bag Lunch. Thanks for joining us. You guys have a great rest of your Wednesday.